This weekend, we've got a new adaptation of Garfield. I was able to watch it yesterday with my whole family, so let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your excitement level for Garfield, your experience with Garfield, and if you've seen the movie, what did you think about it? Now, as for me, I grew up watching the old 80s and 90s Garfield and Friends animated show. I watched it all the time. Even over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to show some of the episodes to my kids in preparation for watching this movie. I was kind of shocked how many episodes I remembered over 30 years later. And based off my love of the TV show back in the day, I read a number of the compilation books of the comic strips. But heading into this movie, I wasn't particularly excited for a couple of reasons. First off, love Chris Pratt. Don't need Chris Pratt to voice every single character, so that casting just seemed very uninspired to me. Second, the more trailers they put out, the less this felt like Garfield to me. The first teaser was about Garfield meeting John for the first time at this Italian restaurant. I thought it was super charming, felt very Garfield to me. But the more they put out, it felt more and more like all these other things besides what makes Garfield Garfield. So was I won over by the film itself? What did my kids think about the film? Let's get started with the review. And simply put, Garfield is fine. It's harmless. My kids enjoyed it, but it's generic and very familiar. Kind of going back to what I mentioned before, Garfield started as a comic strip run where you'd have 3-4 panels, get to a punchline. Real simple little setup punchline. Even with the Garfield and Friends show from the 80s and 90s, it was broken up into 3 different segments, each of them only about 6 minutes long, plus a couple of shorts in there where you just have these little anecdotes. A fun little bit about Garfield wanting lasagna, driving Odie crazy, doing something to John. Simple, straightforward. And even in the episodes, they had this whole other show about farm animals in the middle of it. Short little bits. So when you come to this movie, they're trying to adapt a character, a property that became famous for being short comic strips, short cartoon bits, and they're trying to make a 90-minute movie out of it. And that means they fill out the runtime of this movie with heists, big spectacle train rescue sequences, and working through Garfield's daddy and abandonment issues. None of that particularly sounds like Garfield to me. And so you have a movie that it does all of that fine. There's laughs in here, there's jokes, there's charming, cute bits, there's some fun little action that kind of takes place in it, but it doesn't feel like Garfield. It feels like all this other stuff that we've seen before. A couple of my friends on Twitter described it as feeling like they had an original script not tied to any characters or IP, and a studio head, a producer was like, I like this script, I just want it to be tied to an IP, and they just decided to make it about Garfield last minute and added some superficial Garfield jokes about lasagna throughout the film. And I read that and I went, yeah, that's kind of what this feels like. Like the relationship between Garfield and John, it is so far on the back burner. Even Odie, who's on the whole adventure, is very much a side character. And instead, Garfield's dad, this new character, as well as the villain character, all of them are very prominent. And we're working through all of this stuff that has nothing to do with kind of classic Garfield. And a cat wanting to eat lasagna and all the little hijinks at the house or going on simple vacations. No. We're in the middle of this big crime, heist, spectacle adventure. And to that point, they go with Chris Pratt to voice Garfield. It's become a joke that Chris Pratt voices every lead character in an animated film these days. And so that just feels so uninspired. And it's not like he did anything particularly wrong. He just didn't do anything particularly right. either. And with the rest of the voice cast, with Samuel L. Jackson in there, they're all good enough. No one stood out as bad or did something wrong. Just no one did anything that I was like, oh man, that was really good. Nothing popped as this great vocal performance in the film. Now, as much as I'm kind of poo-pooing on the film and being negative, as I said at the beginning, it's fine. It doesn't actually do anything particularly wrong. Like I said, there's cute bits because you have a cat eating lasagna. Enough of the jokes land to keep you laughing enough. You have action sequences in there that can be fun, that are a little bit like a parody of action movies, in particular the Mission Impossible franchise. There's a number of references to the Mission Impossible franchise where they literally call out Tom Cruise by name and talk about doing their own stunts. Things like that happen in the movie, so they're overtly referencing the Mission Impossible films as a point of reference for their Garfield movie, which is an interesting choice. It's all done professional enough, so it's fine. It works. I wasn't like super bored watching it. I just felt like I've seen this before, and I wish my Garfield movie felt more like Garfield. I wish it leaned into the things that make Garfield unique and distinct and make the film about that. And maybe that's to say that Garfield isn't meant to be a feature-length character. That the appeal are these simple little episodes, little anecdotes that lend themselves to comic strips and animated shorts, but the character's not designed to have big, compelling 90-minute stories where you need a character arc about his dad and how he ended up at John's house and all of his dad's criminal background. Like, do I need any of that for Garfield? No, I do not. Does that serve Garfield? I don't really think it does. And that's what this movie has to offer. And I've seen that in so many other movies before that serve that type of story and character arc much better than Garfield. And that's kind of the big problem here. I didn't need to know about Garfield's dad. And with Garfield, you don't want him to have a big character arc where he's transformed by the end of the movie and stops being Garfield. In which case, this type of story and character journey does not serve Garfield. But like I told you before, I think kids are really going to enjoy this film. They're not going to think about the movie the way that I did. Another one of my friends described this as more of a kids movie than a family movie, where kids will probably have a lot more fun with it and connect with all the silly humor than necessarily adults. I think that's probably a good way of putting it. Here's what my kids had to say about it.
I really liked it because it had like a bunch of funny things.
Did you like the movie?
Yes, it definitely made me at least laugh quite a few times.
It was better than I expected.
I liked the part when he brings that part. It had an interesting story that I don't think is in really any other movies that I watch. And my favorite character who attacked the white cat, I think.
You like the white cat?
No, I like that. I want to attack the white cat.
Oh, you want to attack a white cat?
Yeah, that girl who was the bad guy. It has a bit of a spin to it, and I really like it.
When you put it all together, it has all of the ingredients that a big animated movie is supposed to have. But in the process of doing that, it misses what makes Garfield distinct, unique, and interesting, and replaces them with all these pieces that we've seen in other movies, which don't serve Garfield doesn't serve those plot points, and the plot points don't really serve Garfield. Your kids will enjoy it. If you're young enough, you'll probably have a lot of fun with it, but it's just a little bit too familiar to actually recommend. Overall, it's a C+ on the entertainment scale, a 6 out of 10, and you can wait to stream this movie. There's no reason to rush out to go see this movie in the theater. It is right there in the mediocre middle. Hey, thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye.